India, Russia, China, Brazil and South Africa form one of the world's most formidable economic blocs. Now, the BRICS Heads of States and Government Summit in South Africa's Johannesburg seeks to widen its influence and push for a shift in global geopolitics. Now, yesterday, the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President flanked the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa for a family photograph at the leaders' retreat. However, now the question is this: will the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President hold talks on the sidelines of the summit? In recent years, the border between India and China has become a site of growing tensions. The Chinese aggression has also sparked clashes along the mostly rugged mountainous border that is known as the line of actual control. And Xi Jinping's irrational territorial ambitions, both sides have increasingly militarized their border policies and have shown no indication of backing down. The situation along the border remains very tense due to China's violation of norms, and Beijing and New Delhi are hardening their positions on either side of the line of actual control. Now, India is pretty firm that peace and tranquility in the border areas is absolutely essential. New Delhi has said that it is fully prepared and is committed to protecting sovereignty and dignity. Now, she skipped a BRICS Business Forum meeting despite the presence of counterparts Cyril Ramaphosa, the Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and the Indian Prime Minister. The Chinese Commerce Minister read Xi Jinping's message, which stated that emerging countries are being blocked and suppressed. At the BRICS Business Summit, Prime Minister Modi described India as a welcome destination for global investment.
Discussions that dealt with the substance of the business forum and bank.
इस बात में कोई संदेह नहीं कि आने वाले वर्षों में भारत विश्व का ग्रोथ इंजन होगा। ये इसलिए है क्योंकि भारत ने आपदा और मुश्किलों के समय को आर्थिक सुधार के अवसर में परिवर्तित किया। पिछले कुछ वर्षों में हमने मिशन मोड में जो रिफॉर्म्स किए हैं, उनसे भारत में ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस में लगातार बढ़ोतरी हुई है। हमने कंप्लायंस बर्डन को कम किया है, रेड टेप को हटाकर रेड कारपेट बिछा रहे हैं।
Now, Putin, of course, decided against attending the summit in person as he's the target of an international criminal court arrest warrant that South Africa is, in theory, bound to enforce. Addressing the business forum, the Russian president said that BRICS works for a global majority. He also said that Russia will remain a reliable food supplier to Africa and is in talks on providing free grain to a group of African nations, as he had promised at the summit in St. Petersburg last month. The promise, of course, came after Russia pulled out of a deal that had enabled Ukraine to export grain from its Black Sea ports. After the grain deal exit, it repeatedly bombed Ukrainian ports and grain stores, leading to Kiev in the West of accusing it of using food as a weapon of war. The BRICS was founded as an informal club in 2009 to provide a platform for its members to challenge a world order dominated by the United States and its Western allies. Its creation was initiated, of course, by Russia, and as per the United Nations data, the BRICS grouping represents more than 1/4 of the global GDP. It also represents 42% of the world's population. Significantly, the BRICS have also seen their economic influence increase over the past decade. As drivers of global growth, trade and investment, the bloc operates by consensus. Now, all of the BRICS nations are part of the G20 nations as well. Some 50 other leaders who are not BRICS members, including the Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi and the Indonesian President Joko Widodo, are attending the South Africa talks. Now, at least about 40 countries have shown interest in becoming members, with 23 having formally submitted their applications. Now, some of the countries who are aspiring to be the BRICS members include the likes of Argentina, Bangladesh, Bahrain, Cuba, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, Nigeria, and even Saudi Arabia. The bloc aspirants view BRICS as an alternative to global bodies. Viewed as dominated by the traditional Western powers, they are hoping for membership that could unlock benefits including development finance and also increased trade and investment. Dissatisfaction with the global order among the developing nations has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, when life-saving vaccines were hoarded by the rich nations. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is expected at the BRICS Summit, we're being joined by Mr. Christopher Van Dorm, who's joining us live on this broadcast. He's a senior research fellow with the Chatham House Africa program. Sir, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. The question that I want to ask you is this. So as the leaders of the BRICS nations have come together in Johannesburg, this of course is a big moment in geopolitics. Does it signal a shift in terms of have the world order that presently exists and what is expected to come? Because quite clearly, the BRICS nations now pack a punch, both in terms of economy and also in terms of geopolitics. What's your take on this?
Yeah, this is clearly a significant moment, not least because it's coming at a time when geopolitical questions have really come to the fore for a number of countries in the wake of the conflict in Russia and Ukraine, and that's driving a lot of what's going on within the summit this week in terms of Russia's engagement there, particularly asking questions around a de-dollarized global economy, particularly asking questions around greater trade in local currencies and the expansion of the bloc. So global geopolitics has accelerated some of the drivers that brought the initial BRICS countries together. And for those countries who are looking to join, they do see this as an alternative model of global governance. So it isn't just a case of Western hegemony and the so-called global South, but actually giving a space and a voice for other countries to sit at the same table as some of these big partners.
Absolutely indeed. In this moment, the BRICS nations, in fact, constitute 25% of the global GDP. They are more than 40% of the global population. The question that I want to ask you is, the United States and the Western powers in the aftermath of the Second World War, they'd come together and they'd constituted what was known as the rules-based order to run the geopolitics of the world. Is that what is now under challenge? Because none of these BRICS nations are a part of the West.
I think that there's a lot of the countries who are asking to be part of BRICS still want to be part of a global integrated economic system. They just see the BRICS as being a way of engaging in more constructive group diplomacy, being part of a body of like-minded partners to be able to challenge some of the dominance of Western powers within what has been set up as that rules-based international system. But it is challenging for many of them. So I'm here in South Africa at the moment, and South Africa itself has to answer this question because it isn't Russia, it isn't China, right. It isn't India. It doesn't have the same economic weight as some of these others. But at the same time, it does want to be part of a body that challenges particularly American and European global economic dominance, right. But still has to engage with them in economic terms. So it's about finding partners that can say, look, we're part of the rest. We do have some strength. We do have a voice, and we're able to challenge. And in terms of Western perceptions of this, it's very difficult because here is a group that is broadly aligned on these grounds of wanting to do something differently, wanting to challenge that. But in terms of the material structures and organizations and deliverables from BRICS, they're actually relatively thin. There's not a huge amount to engage with as yet beyond this kind of grand idea.
Absolutely indeed. My last quick question to you is, the BRICS nation also includes India and China, the two big heavyweights in this, and there is friction between India and China. Do you think this is likely to impact the BRICS grouping?
I think that there's the tension between India and China, the tension between, or the awkward relationship between Russia and China, the fact that China is so economically dominant for some of these other smaller partners in terms of trade. These are a number of the frictions that I think are preventing a much more consolidated political bloc. And this is why a lot of the talk is around economics. How can we promote trade? How can we move to a less dollarized world economy and so on? So they want to keep the conversation there rather than have to deal with some of the political realities that exist even within those members.
Absolutely indeed. Christopher, and thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us and getting us all those insights there.
Thank you so much.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.